Napoleon's Italian campaigns disrupted these alliances, winning battles at Montenotte, Lodi, and Arcole. Each victory enhanced his reputation and allowed him to negotiate from strength. By 1797, he had established French dominance over northern Italy, reshaping borders and treaties to favor France. But success bred enemies. Within France, factions vied for control. The Directory, the five-member executive body, was weak, corrupt, and divided. Some feared Napoleon's growing influence. Yet the young general's skill at public relations, combined with military success, allowed him to navigate the treacherous political landscape. He aligned himself with powerful allies, manipulated public opinion, and avoided the pitfalls that had destroyed others. Napoleon's ambitions were not limited to the battlefield. In 1798, he led an expedition to Egypt, ostensibly to challenge British interests. The campaign combined military action with scientific exploration. Scholars and engineers accompanied the army, studying ancient monuments and documenting flora, fauna, and culture. At the Battle of the Pyramids, Napoleon once again demonstrated tactical brilliance, defeating the Mamluk forces with disciplined infantry and artillery formations. Yet Egypt also revealed the limits of his power. The British Navy, under Admiral Nelson, destroyed the French fleet at the Battle of the Nile. Napoleon was stranded, but instead of despairing, he maintained control over the narrative. He returned to France under cover, leaving his army behind, and stepped into a nation hungry for strong leadership. The political vacuum and the Directory's weakness allowed him to stage a coup in 1799, the Coup of 18, Brumaire seizing power and establishing the consulate. Napoleon's rise was both sudden and inevitable. His understanding of military, political, and social currents allowed him to exploit chaos with precision. By blending charisma, intellect, and audacity, he transformed from a young officer into the central figure in French politics. His victories had reshaped Europe's military map, and his political maneuvering positioned him to define France's destiny. The conflict that shaped Napoleon was not only external, but internal. He had to balance the revolutionary ideals of liberty and equality with the practical need for centralized authority. Every victory brought new expectations and new challenges. Europe watched with alarm. France, exhausted by revolution, yearned for stability. Napoleon promised both, and he delivered on his terms. By 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte had transformed from a revolutionary general to the most powerful man in France. The French Revolution's chaos had subsided, and the nation craved stability. Napoleon delivered, but on his terms. In a grand ceremony at Notre Dame Cathedral, he crowned himself Emperor of the French, signaling that his authority came not from God, but from himself. It was audacious, bold, and symbolic of his unrivaled ambition. Napoleon's vision extended far beyond France. Europe was fractured, and he saw himself as the arbiter of order and modernity. He reorganized the French state, centralizing administration, reforming tax collection, and establishing the Napoleonic Code. This legal framework abolished feudal privileges, guaranteed property rights, and standardized laws, principles that endure today. He understood that power required legitimacy, not just fear. Militarily, Napoleon reached heights unmatched in his era. The Battle of Austerlitz, 1805, often called his greatest victory, exemplified his genius. Facing combined Russian and Austrian forces, he employed deception, speed, and terrain to lure the enemy into a trap. The result? A crushing defeat for the coalition, cementing Napoleon's reputation as the unrivaled tactician of Europe. Following Austerlitz, Napoleon reshaped the continent. He imposed his family members on thrones, creating a network of allied monarchies. His influence extended from Spain to Italy, from the Confederation of the Rhine to the Duchy of Warsaw. Yet not all accepted his dominance willingly. Guerrilla warfare in Spain, British naval supremacy, and the unyielding Russian winter posed constant challenges. Napoleon's conquests were both brilliant and controversial. He modernized occupied territories, building roads, schools, and infrastructure. At the same time, conscription and taxation bred resentment. Cities that once cheered French victories sometimes simmered with rebellion. Napoleon was a master of both innovation and intimidation, and Europe learned that opposing him meant either submission or devastation. His campaigns combined strategy, logistics, and charisma. Napoleon moved armies faster than opponents could react. He understood the psychology of troops, inspiring loyalty even in harsh conditions. His victories at Jena, Wagram, and Eylau demonstrated not just brute force but meticulous planning. Yet even at the peak of power, cracks appeared. Napoleon Bonaparte was not born to power. He seized it. From a remote island in the Mediterranean to the throne of France, he reshaped Europe. He commanded armies, toppled kings, and changed the laws that still influence the world today. But behind the legend was a man shaped by circumstance, intellect, and ambition, whose rise would ignite the continent in flames of revolution and war. Napoleon's story begins in Corsica, a rugged island that had only recently been ceded to France. Born in 1769, he grew up among whispers of rebellion and tales of lost independence. His family was noble, but poor. His youth was marked by struggle and determination, schooling in mainland France, where he was often mocked for his accent and foreign ways. Yet even as a boy, he showed brilliance in mathematics, strategy, and rhetoric. The world into which Napoleon was born was volatile. France was simmering with discontent. Economic inequality, unfair taxation, and Enlightenment ideas were reshaping society. Philosophers like Rousseau and Voltaire had challenged the divine right of kings. The seeds of revolution had been sown, and Napoleon would ride the storm they created. Corsica itself played a critical role. The island had long resisted foreign control, and the Corsican sense of honor, pride, and defiance would stay with Napoleon for life. His father, Carlo Bonaparte, was a lawyer and political figure who supported the French administration. The family's modest wealth allowed young Napoleon to attend military school in mainland France, a rare opportunity for someone of his background. France in the late 18th century was a nation on the edge. The common people, the tiers état, bore crushing taxes while the nobility and clergy lived in luxury. Grain shortages, rising bread prices, and economic stagnation have fueled anger. Enlightenment ideas spread rapidly, questioning monarchy and advocating equality, liberty, and fraternity. These philosophical currents offered hope, but also a blueprint for upheaval. Napoleon entered military school at Brienne-le-Château. He was small, reserved, and intensely competitive. Classmates often mocked his Corsican accent, yet he excelled in artillery and mathematics. Even in his teenage years, he wrote essays on military strategy and revolutionary theory. The French Revolution, which began in 1789, became the catalyst for his rise. While many fled or faltered, Napoleon saw opportunity in chaos. The revolution dismantled the old order. Nobles fled or were executed. The monarchy fell. France became a republic, but it was unstable. Internal factions vied for power: royalists, Jacobins, Girondins. The revolutionary government needed capable military leaders, and Napoleon's early campaigns against royalist insurgents in Toulon demonstrated his audacity and tactical genius. His daring strategies, bold decisions, and ability to inspire troops marked him as a rising star. Napoleon's Corsican roots, combined with his brilliant mind, allowed him to see both the opportunities and dangers of revolutionary France. He was ambitious but pragmatic, a student of human behavior and politics as much as military science. His rise was not merely personal, it was the product of historical forces, social upheaval, and a Europe in flux. By the time he was in his early 20s, Napoleon had already begun to craft his image. He understood symbolism, ceremony, and the power of reputation. Letters, reports, and even portraits became tools of influence. The young artillery officer from Corsica was on the verge of becoming the man who would redefine France and Europe forever. France was still a nation on fire when Napoleon first took command in earnest. Revolutionary fervor raged in Paris, provincial uprisings threatened stability, and European monarchies watched nervously from across the border. Napoleon's genius was not merely in strategy, it was timing. He arrived on the battlefield when chaos demanded boldness. His early success came in Italy. In 1796, at just 26 years old, he was appointed commander of the French army of Italy. The army was under-equipped, poorly disciplined, and demoralized. Yet Napoleon turned weakness into strength. He understood terrain, speed, and morale better than his enemies. Using rapid maneuvers, surprise attacks, and calculated risks, he defeated Austrian and Piedmontese forces repeatedly. The victories in Italy were more than military, they were political. Napoleon sent dispatches back to Paris, not as mere reports, but as carefully crafted narratives portraying him as the savior of the revolution. His correspondence, full of confidence and flair, captured the imagination of the French public. Soldiers adored him. Politicians feared him. Napoleon was learning the art of power. Meanwhile, Europe was forming coalitions against revolutionary France. Austria, Prussia, Britain, and other monarchies feared the spread of revolutionary ideals. His obsession with dominance led to overreach, and enemies adapted. The Russian campaign of 1812 marked the beginning of that overreach. Seeking to enforce his continental system against Britain, Napoleon invaded Russia with over 600,000 men. Initial victories in battles like Smolensk were overshadowed by the brutal winter, scorched earth tactics, and logistical collapse. The Grande Armée, once invincible, was decimated. Tens of thousands perished from cold, hunger, and disease. Napoleon's aura of invincibility began to fade. Still, his impact at this stage was undeniable. He had reshaped the political map of Europe, spread revolutionary ideals, and created a legacy of military brilliance. Yet the seeds of his eventual decline were sown. His ambition, once a source of triumph, became a liability. Europe united against him, and the stage was set for the final act of his story. Napoleon's fall was as dramatic as his rise. After the disastrous Russian campaign and defeats at Leipzig and elsewhere, Europe united against him. In 1814, Paris fell, and Napoleon was forced to abdicate. Exiled to Elba, a small Mediterranean island, he seemed finished. Yet even in exile, his presence loomed large over Europe. Napoleon's return in 1815, the 100 Days, demonstrated his enduring charisma and strategic audacity. He landed on the French coast, rallied troops, and marched to Paris with astonishing speed. The French army, loyal and inspired, welcomed him back. Europe braced for another conflict. The climax of this return came at Waterloo. Facing the British under Wellington and the Prussians under Blucher, Napoleon attempted to reclaim glory. Yet this time, strategy and timing failed him. Rain-soaked fields, miscommunications, and determined allies led to a crushing defeat. The era of Napoleon's dominance ended on June 18, 1815. He was exiled again, this time to Saint Helena, a remote island in the South Atlantic. Here, cut off from the world, he spent his final years reflecting on his life, dictating memoirs, and observing the world beyond his reach. Napoleon died in 1821, at age 51, leaving a legacy that is still debated today. Napoleon's impact was profound and multifaceted. The Napoleonic Code became a model for legal systems worldwide, influencing Europe, the Americas, and beyond. His military innovations organization, logistics, combined arms tactics, changed warfare forever. He demonstrated that a single individual could shape the course of history, for better or worse. Yet his ambition also brought suffering. Wars across Europe caused millions of deaths, devastated economies, and reshaped borders. Occupied nations resisted, some with guerrilla warfare, others with revolutions of their own. Napoleon was both a liberator and conqueror, a reformer and tyrant. In France, he remains a complex figure. He restored stability after revolution, centralized administration, and promoted meritocracy. Yet his imperial ambitions and wars left deep scars. Across Europe, he inspired both admiration and fear. Leaders studied his campaigns, nations learned from his reforms, and his story became the blueprint for ambition, innovation, and the limits of power. Napoleon's life embodies the tension between genius and hubris. He rose from obscure beginnings to dominate a continent, reshaping politics, society, and law. His fall reminds us that no matter how brilliant, unchecked ambition carries consequences. The world he left behind was forever changed: new nations, new ideas, and the enduring reminder that history is made by those bold enough to seize it. Even today, statues, portraits, and monuments commemorate him. His strategies are taught in military academies. His reforms remain embedded in civil law. Napoleon Bonaparte is not merely a historical figure. He is a symbol of human ambition, intelligence, and the fragile balance between triumph and disaster. If you found Napoleon's journey from Corsican outsider to Emperor of France as fascinating as we do, hit like, subscribe for more historical deep dives, and comment below with which moment in his life you think changed the world the most.